Arab states are now making an unprecedented call to Hamas.
The entire Arab League, along with the European Union and 17 other countries, backed a joint statement urging Hamas to disarm and relinquish power in the Gaza Strip.
The declaration says it's the only way the war in Gaza can come to an end. It also proposes the deployment of a temporary international stabilization mission, which would be led by the UN to help cultivate the creation of a functioning, sovereign Palestinian state after the war is over.
It's a meaningful indication of this momentum that's been garnered to support a two-state solution. French President Macron really kicked it off by first announcing France's intention to recognize a Palestinian state. Now he's been followed by the British, and it leaves the U.S. as one of the only permanent members of the UN Security Council not to do so. And we've heard from both the French and British leaders say that part of the reason for this push is that discussions about arriving at a two-state solution had really subsided, especially amid the spike in tensions in the Middle East.
Our main goal is to deliver a clear message that peace is possible. We want to build an alternative to the state of permanent war in the region, and this alternative must come by way of the two-state solution, Israel and Palestine living in peace and security. This is France's historical position, and it is the only way possible.
Days before the conference, French President Emmanuel Macron announced that he would formally recognize a Palestinian state in September, with France becoming the first Western member of the UN Security Council to do so. 142 of the UN's 193 member states currently recognize a Palestinian state, and Saudi Arabia's foreign minister urged more nations to do the same.
Only through the establishment of a Palestinian state and only through addressing the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people to self-determination can we have sustainable peace.
Part of that warning came yesterday, as you mentioned, from Canada, which now plans to recognize the state of Palestine during the UN General Assembly in September. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney made that announcement yesterday. It comes one day after the United Kingdom said it would do the same, barring a ceasefire in Gaza. Last week, French President Emmanuel Macron said his country also will recognize Palestine.
I can confirm the UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire, and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a two-state solution.
Wir sind davon überzeugt, dass eine verhandelte Zwei-Staaten-Lösung die beste Chance bleibt, dieses Ziel eines Tages zu erreichen. Die Anerkennung eines palästinensischen Staates betrachten wir gegenwärtig aber nicht als den richtigen Schritt. Es kann einer der letzten Schritte auf dem Weg zur Verwirklichung einer Zwei-Staaten-Lösung sein. Die Bundesregierung plant insofern nicht, kurzfristig einen palästinensischen Staat anzuerkennen.
Vielen Dank. Vielen Dank, meine Damen und Herren. Bis später.
Merci beaucoup.
I salute the historic and courageous decision of France and President Macron to recognize the state of Palestine in September.
But hang on there for a moment, Marwan, because just want to get onto this. Dozens of ministers are gathered at the United Nations work towards a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians. But the US and Israel, they're boycotting the event hosted by France and Saudi Arabia. And the Saudi foreign minister, he spoke on the importance of Trump in ceasefire negotiations. Have a listen to this.
And I am firmly in the belief that US engagement, and especially the engagement of President Trump, can be a catalyst for an end to the immediate crisis in Gaza and potentially a resolution of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict in the long term. So obviously we, as strong partners of the United States, continue to work closely with the US on many issues, and we hope that the US will continue to lead in the efforts for peace. And as I said, we have tremendous respect and faith in President Trump's not just belief and hope in peace, but in his ability to deliver on that hopes.
What about pressure from Europe? We've got President Macron, who's co-hosting this conference with Saudi, announcing that France will recognise the Palestinian state. How might that shift the dynamic or not?
You know, okay, so let's start with the positive, okay? So there are attempts now by embarrassed, humiliated, complicit European leaders with genocide the past 22 months to cleanse themselves from the charge. I don't think they're going to be ever cleansed. History does not forgive genociders or enablers of genocide. We know that. But some European leaders are now trying to, you know, take a different path or a separate path. But we also know that they cannot change the situation, as I said earlier. France cannot change the situation on the ground in Gaza. It doesn't have that kind of leverage with Israel.
You want Palestinians to say, here's the conditions we're prepared to sign up to. They got to reassure Israel. At the end of the day, a Palestinian state cannot be imposed from the outside. So again, this is all signs that the world has grown weary with what Israel is doing in Gaza and increasingly opposes it. But the president has political standing in Israel that even Bibi Netanyahu doesn't have. If the president wants to move the needle in Gaza, he can do it. He can put pressure on Israel, not by declaring support for a Palestinian state unconditionally, but by pushing the Israelis to come up with a day after plan.
Greg, just briefly, UK's Keir Starmer, I mean, obviously he's not said that he'll recognise the Palestinian state yet, but he says he will if it gets to the point where they give back the hostages, lay down their arms and work with Israel on a ceasefire. He's gone about as close as he can to saying he'll back what the French have done. Where does that leave our Prime Minister, do you believe?
I think queued up to follow suit, Steve. I think that we're at a tipping point now. It's not that anyone's saying a two-state solution is easy, but the question is, we've had all this focus on tactics, and Netanyahu has really been tactically brilliant, but strategically there's been nothing there. There's no plans for the day after. So for the people of Israel and Palestine to have a secure future, 7 million people in each community, there is no way to build a secure future unless we think about some sort of political solution. And as impossible as the two-state solution seems, there is no better solution unless you can have a one-state solution, but politically that's not viable. So I think that Australia is going to find itself under considerable pressure to join in Western democracies in saying we've got to work on a political solution. 3/4 of the UN member states support or acknowledge Palestine. The ones that don't are primarily Western democracies and a few outliers like Japan as well. There's reasons why people have said it's just a symbolic move to declare support for a Palestinian state, but it's got to be seen in the context of trying to find a political solution and work strategically to lasting, to building security and peace for everyone in Israel and Palestine.